Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the Pork Queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. From the Brady Dental Care Studio, I'm joined with a very special guest today. We've actually been friends, and this is kind of, I got my traditional radio start alongside this guy, although you've been at it way, way longer than I have.
Now you're making me sound old. That's
Andy Petersen joins us. For those that recognize that voice immediately, what's up?
Hey, it's great to be here.
So thanks for joining me. I appreciate
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And I haven't talked into one of these things, at least in a studio, in 126 days, I think it was. So we'll see if I remember how to do this.
So we're going to get into this because we both have a WHO and iHeart story to tell.
We do.
We're going to get into that. But first, everybody, we keep bringing you every week a new Iowan doing something fascinating. So we're going to talk more than just about WHO. We're going to talk about Iowa farming today, technology, what's going to happen this summer. But make sure to subscribe and give this show 5 stars so every other Iowan can find it. You can find it everywhere. It's Google Podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and of all places, iHeartRadio. So, Andy, thanks for coming in.
Of course.
The big question, we're going to talk about Iowa farming because you're the expert in that area. But the big question is, where'd you go?
Where did
you go? You were on the big show for a while. Yeah. I was also on WHO for a while, and both of us just kind of vanished. What happened?
7 years. I spent there in 21 with iHeartRadio in general. I got my start, actually, from my FFA advisor at Midland High School in Wyoming, Iowa, Jones County. I had done, Midland was pretty well known for Iowa State Speech Contest and the radio broadcast competition. And so our English teacher, Mr. Meyer, John Meyer, recruited me as a freshman to participate there.
I didn't know that.
And I managed to achieve all conference my freshman and sophomore year, and then made all state my junior and senior year. So fast forward to my senior year, there's a new FFA advisor, Eric Schmidt, who's now at Monticello and is excellent. And he says, hey, you do this radio broadcast state speech contest. You should do FFA radio broadcasting competition.
Interesting.
And I said, well, okay, yeah, why not? And he said, I tell you what, I went to high school with a guy who's at WMT Radio, which is an iHeart station in Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids, yeah.
And I'll just email him, and I'm sure he'll send us some copy that you can practice with. A guy by the name of Ryan Schlater, who was in the news department, handled play-by-play for high school sports for a number of years, other special projects, and now is outreach coordinator for Lynn County Conservation there in Cedar Rapids, and I still have the pleasure of working with Ryan every once in a while on a KCRG 9.2 broadcast. But
interesting.
Anyway, so Ryan emailed Eric some copy, and we practiced, and I made it to state, but not very far, which there's a really funny story about the judge that day, which I didn't find out until 15 years later that we can talk about too. But anyway, fast forward a couple of months, and Ryan reaches out to Eric and says, hey, our farm director, Karen Schulte at the time, looking for an intern. I don't know what your senior is going to do, but if you wanted to take the internship, why, or at least talk to her about it, I'm sure she would listen. And so Eric said that to me, and I said, absolutely, give Ryan my number. And he passed that along to Karen, and Karen called, and I spent the summer of 2001 as an intern in the farm department. Randy Lee hired me that fall to do some part-time work, and fast forward up to now, I guess, and that story or that chapter has come to an end on December 5th.
Well, how'd you get to WHO though?
Well, so
was that a program on WHO? Were they affiliated somehow?
It wasn't at the time, but what we're going to talk about is, it's no secret that I don't think, at least, that iHeart has been in a staff reducing environment for a number of different years. So Karen, they eliminated her position.
Oh wow.
And that was another. And not to get too far off into the weeds with people you don't know, but that was the start of a theme, or at least a continuation of a theme of management decisions that have not benefited much of anybody, in my opinion. And then they put the big show on WMT, hosted at the time by Gary Morgan and Mark Pearson. And, of course, Gary passed away a couple of years later due to complications of cancer treatment. Lost Gary far too young. Of course, Ken Root then followed Gary with Bob Quinn. And Ken did it for a few years, and they eliminated that position. Bruce Gorder was in there for a little while as well. And then, of course, we lost Mark, who was a tremendous influence and mentor to me over the years as well.
What was Mark's last name?
Mark Pearson.
Yeah.
And lost him in 2012 at the far too young age of 54. And so when that happened, obviously, to everybody's surprise, I was sort of the natural fit there with my ag background. And so I filled in for a while, combined with my role at WMT Radio at the time in the news department. And then they hired somebody who lasted 2 years and asked me to fill in again. And I did for a little while. And then they hired somebody again who lasted 7 months and probably never had a chance. And he left. And then it's like, okay, well, I love filling in. Maybe you ought to just make this permanent. And they did. And that was something that took far too long.
That's kind of how my story started, too.
Ultimately got us there. And then we experienced, I think, success. I may have been the only person, actually, that felt like that was going to work for a little while. And then obviously had tremendous success for 7 years. And
7, that's what I was going to ask, 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years on the big show. And, it went by in a hurry. There's no doubt about that. And then somebody decided apparently that that wasn't necessary anymore. So here we are. And I know that it sounds maybe like a sort of a canned answer, but literally I was on remote on December 5th and was scheduled to go the next day to Lincoln, Nebraska to cover the Nebraska Ag Expo. And so I wasn't. I was headed there after the show was over with in order to get there and make the travel times work. So the next day was something a little shorter than 3:30 in the morning until getting home at 7 o'clock at night. And received a call and said, "Hey, stop in when you get back. We need to go over a couple things before I leave on vacation." And I was immediately confused and because I wasn't planning on going back, and they knew that. And so anyway, long story short, I ended up doing that and was informed that my position had been eliminated due to corporate restructuring, effective immediately.
Yeah, I know. I got obviously a similar thing. Now, for those that don't know, WHO for me was 2 hours on a weekend. It was like a fun little hobby. But we did record ratings in the morning. I started out in the morning show, me and Adrienne Branstad. We had record ratings, did really well. And then we're getting a ton of web views. Basically, there was a point we were getting more web views than everybody else on that station combined. And they just decided, you're done now. Yeah. That was during the whole KXNO thing, when all that whole kerfuffle, that was during that. And so... that was the second show. The first show, me and Adrienne, that got canceled. I did my own show for a year. That got canceled after we, had record ratings on that too. So yeah, we're both in that same position. It's really bizarre. I still don't know what kind of logic goes into making these decisions because, you get record ratings, you get revenue, you get profit, and they still don't really care, which is kind of weird. But
and so it's been, as I mentioned, 126 days. And I still get messages, and that's, for being blindsided and shocked and stunned and obviously horribly upset. And irritated.
You still get So it's been years since I've been on WHO, and it was like 2 hours. Like I said, 2 hours on a weekend. Not exactly like the heyday of radio, right? And it's that's like kind of radio people will tell you that's radio abyss. The weekend, it's difficult. But
Well,
I
it's
still,
become that.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. So I still get people. It's been years since I've been there. I don't know how long now. At least 3 years? Has it been 3 years? Something like that?
Yeah.
I still get people saying, so how's WHO? And I'm like, man, I have not been there for like 3 or 4 years.
And
I don't know what that says about the listening base, but, who knows?
Yeah. But some of those people you may have made connections with in one way, shape, or form.
Right. That's true.
That's
yeah.
one thing that I've learned, certainly, as I've traveled around and spoken to various groups and served as MC and that sort of thing, is while I'd love to meet everybody personally, and I do genuinely mean that, in a lot of cases there just isn't enough time to do it, and people have other commitments. So, after the meeting, they have to get going, and instead of coming up to say hi,
right.
well, that's fine.
Yeah.
But truly, the ag industry through a very challenging time. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about. Like, why is it in a challenging time?
Well, yeah, I mean, I spent 21 years, first of all, at the place. I felt like my track record was proven. I don't think there's really any debate about that, or there shouldn't be. And, if there was restructuring going on, wouldn't you include the guy who probably made it necessary?
Mm-hmm.
Not through failure, but through success.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's restructuring going on because we're so busy now,
right,
that we don't have time to do it all.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, there hasn't been a replacement. So it looks like they just cut another position, which
interesting.
There are companies that are in contraction mode and companies that are in expansion mode. And,
yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, I'll speak generally because I don't want to tick off the wrong people. But for those that don't know, the Big Show is one of the biggest revenue drivers for WHO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most people don't know that.
Absolutely.
And that number is, if I could get more detailed, I would. But that number is way more impressive if you actually see the books. But you know what I mean? I can't probably go much further than that because I'm sure that legally I'm probably not allowed to, but for those that don't know, the Big Show and what you built and what you and Bob and Doug built is very, very impressive machine. But, what's done is done. What I want to get into is you're shockingly active still, because you have all these relationships. They weren't necessarily WHO radio's relationships in ag. You're actually in the Des Moines studio right now because you just went to another event. What was that?
Yeah, well, and that's where I was transitioning to here. See a little inside the business.
I beat you.
The art of a transition. Right? Well, you're a host, so you should be.
You warned me beforehand you might start interviewing me, but I'm going to try to keep you at bay. I'm going to do my best.
But truly, and I mean this wholeheartedly, the industry has been wonderful. And the folks who I've gotten to know and had the pleasure of getting to know through my travels associated with the station or otherwise, have been fantastic. I mean, I've gotten calls from elected officials that you would know, who I've got to know on a permanent or a first name basis. Iowa Corn Growers, Iowa Soybean Association, Iowa Pork Producers Association, Iowa Cattlemen's Association have all found different ways to keep me busy when they didn't have to.
And you're emceeing a lot of those events, right?
And that's another thing, is all of the events that I've served as master ceremonies for have all continued. And that part of this has truly been a silver lining and a blessing. But it's like the model that is being shifted to by some of the larger owners is simply, okay, you want to start your own business making widgets. Yeah. Okay, so you rent a space and you open the door and you stand behind the counter and expect the masses are going to flock to you.
And they will never flock to you.
And that's akin to hitting the button on the mic and talking and expecting the masses are going to flock to you. And
it's so true.
Hasn't worked that way ever. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that I'm doing in regard to, helping out the different commodity groups, serving in different roles, that's, if you think back to when, there were three, and I know competition certainly and diversification within the industry and all of that sort of thing, but the most successful stations at the time had a staff that did those things in the community. And that, as much as anything,
that's so true,
is why you're seeing the audience erosion that you're seeing to the people who are doing them. Now, it may very well be that the person who MCs the banquet that you go to, that's the only one they do all year, and they have a podcast, and so it's very fragmented. But those are the 300 or 400 people that you're talking about who they still have influence with, as opposed to you and I, who are maybe doing it on a more regular basis. A little bit, hopefully, more refined skill set in that direction through practice and probably failure.
Oh yeah, my first time on live air, I was praying for a power outage.
Yeah,
I was like, please. I was like, I got this. This is no problem. This is no problem. It was on WHO, and then that old Jan Michelson music, because I was filling in for him a couple times. That's how I got my start on radio. I'd already had a podcast for years before that, so that's kind of, I didn't know I was auditioning, but I was auditioning kind of a thing. So you're obviously still very active, like I said earlier, in the farming thing. So what are we gonna? I don't see, and this is the area I don't know anything about. So you can just interview yourself, I guess. But you've been going to all these events, you've been insanely busy. Because I'm like, well, maybe I can get some FaceTime with Andy now, and you're all over the state still. I also want to talk about like drones flying over Iowa farms.
We can talk ag too. I mean,
what are we going to see this year? Or is there anything that's going to be different? Anything new or exciting that people are talking about?
Yeah, agriculture-wise, I mean, I guess I'd say this at the heart of it. I'm still and always have been a fourth generation diversified family farmer from Wyoming, Iowa, Jones County, and that hasn't changed even when I was working full time. I was generally out at the farm in the off hours, particularly during planting and harvesting season. And heavily involved in the operation, and I certainly have grown up around it and have a great passion for modern food, fuel, and fiber production. And so this all kind of fits with that, including promotion of it on that forum. Now, obviously, that forum has changed greatly without my presence and my knowledge and the audience that I had brought to it. And that's sad to me. That's heartbreaking that ag would have to lose that voice for a period of time for some reason. So I'd like to do something about that in one way, shape, or form. And that's what a few people have said to me also, but that's not going to happen overnight either. So what have I been doing in the meantime? And in addition to all the speaking gigs that have kept up, done some consulting for Iowa Ag Water, which is Iowa Agriculture Water Line. Sean McMahon called and has been excellent. And he said, hey, you know what? This is right up your alley. And it is. I mean, as an environmentally conscious producer in the long-term no-till operation, it certainly fits. And there's a big campaign coming up to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the nutrient reduction strategy, as a landmark and revolutionary piece of legislation that really has changed the course of water quality and environmental stewardship here in the state that we'll be celebrating. But you're starting to see, I saw on the drive today, 2 anhydrous applicators out in the field. A little bit of dust flying.
What is this? For because we have some non-farm audience people too. So.
I was voluntary nutrient reduction strategy was a landmark piece of legislation that was crafted by then Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, Bill Northey, who's just up the street here, is now CEO of the Agribusiness Association. Out of the idea that we needed to, and keep in mind that a lot of these nutrients are naturally occurring. They're also key fertilizers for the plants that we grow that provide ultimately the source of our affordable food supply. But we continue to learn more too about all of this. I mean, the environmental tests continue to advance. We continue to develop different ways to monitor things. We continue to improve on the art of modern row crop and modern meat animal producing methods. And yet there's, the dead zone down in the Gulf of Mexico, that nutrient runoff is thought to play a role in. And so Secretary Northey at the time saw a need to try and enhance Iowa's the environmental efforts of Iowa farmers and also promote some of them. I mean, reality is a lot of what goes on out at the farm isn't all that well known, and a lot of producers are involved in these efforts. But there's not a lot of publicity around it, for one, and for two, a lot of these efforts benefit everybody but the producer and come at the producer's singular expense. So, how much is reasonable to expect them to do on their own, which doesn't provide much direct benefit. So anyway, Bill put this together with Chuck Gipp at the DNR, Wendy Winterstein, and John Lawrence up at Iowa State University. Those are the three principles that outlined and established a set of goals and guidelines and a bit of a time frame to work towards better nutrient management here in the state. And that was called the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. Governor Branstad signed it on the 29th of May, which is actually Memorial Day this year, believe it or not. And that really did change the course of not only the agricultural production methods here in the state, but also the level of cooperation between different entities, if you will, that maybe before had seen themselves as being a bit adversarial. Remember the Des Moines Water Works lawsuit against 3 counties here 4 or 5 years ago?
Forgot about that.
So the question is, there is a finite amount of resources here, right? Why would those resources be spent fighting each other?
Right.
If the goal is to improve environmental quality.
Right.
Spend all your resources on that.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Instead of competing interests.
Instead of fighting, you do. Agriculture is absolutely all for it.
Right.
Obviously, everybody in Iowa is all for it.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to find ways to work together here. That's a far better route to go. And so that lawsuit was obviously out there. Thank goodness for Ed Parker and Iowa Farm Bureau, along with a lot of other folks in the industry who led the effort to win that lawsuit. And now you've got Des Moines Water Works actually partnering with entities, producers, cooperatives out in the countryside to enhance some of these practices to under the belief, and I think this is measurable actually now, if you stop it from entering, that is a far more reasonable investment, equitable or economical investment than trying to clean it up later. So rather than a treatment plant,
absolutely, sure.
Let's upgrade the practices. Are you still going to need the treatment plant? Well, of application in a lot of cases, or timing. Sure. Nitrogen is the biggest single source of plant food that's needed. It's also the one that is the most leachable.
Oh, interesting.
And it's also,
I never put that together.
And it's also the one that is maybe the hardest to apply. So rather than putting on one large dosage of anhydrous ammonia in the fall, let's put on a smaller dosage in the spring. So that way it can't leach from November to May when the corn is planted.
Interesting.
And then let's come back and maybe weed and feed with a portion of that in-time application when the plant needs it. So again, it can't leach from May to July when the second application takes place.
Yeah.
Kind of spoon feed the crop. But it all requires different equipment. In a lot of cases, it requires more labor. There's an economic aspect to this as well. At the end of the day, what's happened to fertilizer prices, it does make sense for producers to be more efficient. In other words, it doesn't do the producer any good to spend $1 on nitrogen if that nitrogen ends up in the water and not helping the plant.
So
but we need the technology and the equipment to get there, and that, as much as anything, is what the nutrient reduction strategy has helped to spur.
Last few minutes. what's up with drone tech in Iowa farms? I've been hearing a lot of buzz about this, no pun intended, but are we going to see like drones applying fertilizers, applying nitrogen, is this going to be a thing when we're driving through Iowa roads? We're going to see drones everywhere instead of like crop dusting planes? Is it going to be the thing now?
Yeah, I think it's headed to a degree that in that direction. And there already are a couple of companies who do like cover crop seedings that do some herbicide applications. The biggest obstacle or hurdle that they have to overcome is the weight.
Right. Yeah, that's what I don't understand.
Now, as far as a crop dusting plane, the biggest hurdle that they have to overcome is accuracy and precision, because there are obstacles.
Good point. Power lines,
speed,
tree lines.
Correct.
Yeah.
Creeks, irregularly shaped fields,
right.
All that sort of thing.
Shifting wind.
And landing and takeoff.
Right, absolutely. It's a lot of time.
Fly back and forth to the airport to load all the time.
Yeah.
So there's no perfect system. The helicopters are a part of it too, and you're seeing more and more helicopters that are spraying fungicides and not necessarily applying fertilizer, but because they can land everywhere, but a helicopter's inherently smaller and they're slower.
Yeah.
The drones can't go very far, but if they can come back and load. So there's absolutely...
Are we going to basically see bee swarms of drones doing this? So each drone is responsible for like a 16th of an acre, and we just see them making more trips? Is that the solution?
That is what, and the drones continue to get bigger. I mean,
some of them are
the octocopters now are bigger than the table that you and I are sitting at.
Right, yeah.
So they can carry more weight, and they come back and reload. And the, it's all advancement of technology and formulations of the herbicide to where they're more potent and put on less, per acre and that sort of thing. So that's an emerging technology. But I would also tell you this, we enjoy drones because they're cool and we can see them, right?
Right.
Well, another emerging technology that's harder to see unless you actually sit in one of these 747-esque planter cabs that are in existence today is the technology that allows those nutrients like nitrogen that we talked about earlier and some of the dry fertilizers, strip till, that sort of thing, to be placed on a pinpoint precision basis, right where the plant is going to need them and use them.
How are they doing that?
Well, it's technology. Like I said, the 747 cabs with the different monitors, and pieces of equipment, modules, and physical injection methods that allow and have created the ability to more accurately place these things on a large scale basis. And it's that corn planter that you see each row that's out there. Well, now they may have a knife on each side of those double disc openers that plant the seed that is applying the nitrogen fertilizer. Wow! So it's right above the root zone. The plant grows roots. There it is. Sucks it all up. Never has the chance to go any deeper and leach into the water.
Yeah.
You can't. It's impossible.
That's crazy.
It's impossible from a timing perspective to apply enough nitrogen for the entire growing season, because we do talk about May to September, October, 6-month growing season. And that plant actually needs, thanks to modern genetics, more nitrogen. An 8-foot plant is obviously going to use far more resources than an 8-inch plant, right?
Right, like soybeans or something.
Well, soybeans, so you're talking about two different crops there. Corn's actually a grass. Soybeans are broadleaf. Soybeans make their own nitrogen because they're also a legume.
Oh!
So you don't have to apply.
Can you tell who the farming expert is here?
But I will also tell you... this, and that is, you're talking about the energy of the plant. There is some research now that suggests that you actually should apply some nitrogen to the soybean plant so that rather than spending its energy to make its own, it can put that energy into reproduction.
Sure,
the seeds.
Giving it a little nudge
in yield, which is ultimately what
now they're
we're
also
after.
using drones to scan like plant health. They can they use computer vision and they can tell if something is deficient, and based off just a little aerial visual scan, they can tell the farmer where exactly, more moisture is needed and more nutrition is needed. Are we going to be seeing that active in farms this summer too, in the Iowa skies? Yeah,
I think you are. I think you're going to see more of that. I will also tell you, though, as someone who's been at a couple of these demonstrations, those drones are hard to see once they get high enough up in the air. A couple 100 feet, which is below the FAA ceiling. And of course, most operators now have their
licenses.
Licenses. But the camera technology isn't good enough to go much higher than that. So it may be happening, and you may drive by and you
not
may
even
not
see it.
Even notice it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The sprayers are different because they're terrain of the ground,
right?
The terrain and that sort of thing. But they're trying to do that with satellites too, with varying amounts of success.
Wow. Yeah, my word.
But it's changed. There's no question that modern agricultural production and the source of your food supply and how it is provided to the processor is advancing rapidly.
Yeah, they're using some of this technology to individually, like for organic farming that can't use certain pesticides and stuff. Aren't they using certain technology to like specifically target weeds so that you don't have to mass apply like a pesticide?
Yeah, of course, those definitions change to a certain degree also.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how widely commercialized it is, right? But I've seen some demos.
Yeah, okay, so you want to get into some terminology. GMO.
Well, we're over time, but I figured I'd ask if we're going to see those.
You ask a guy who hosts a 2-hour show daily to come in and talk.
I know.
But GMOs have sort of a negative connotation, but the reality is that I think it's 5 trillion meals around the world have been eaten with food produced by GMOs.
Yeah, I was talking
absolutely no negative outcomes.
I know. I was talking with someone about this because there was some anti-GMO thing at the World Food Prize, some protesters, and one of them was kind of venturing off. And so I happened to be walking the same direction. So I wasn't like fighting with them or anything, but I just said, "Oh, what are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, we're protesting GMOs." And I'm like, "Why?" Yeah. "Oh, because of blah, 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 blah." I said, "Okay, I don't know everything about ag. Maybe you're right." I was like, "But would you rather millions of people starve? Because that's kind of the alternative." And they're like, "Well, we think there are better ways to do it." I'm like, "Cool. What are those ways?" "Well, that's, researchers need to prove that." And I'm like, "Well, okay." Yeah. So, go figure.
All a GMO is, and even doing this,
our corn is big because it was genetically modified.
But you know what? All they do is they turn on or turn off a specific protein within the plant. Mm-hmm. No different than the grafted roots on an apple tree.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not anything that's threatening.
Yeah.
And yet it's kind of turned into that. So.
Yeah. Well,
that's a whole other conversation. That's not why you asked me to come.
That's our next 45-minute conversation. Andy Petersen, thank you so much for coming in here. Is there a way people can reach out to you right now, social media or? Yeah,
certainly on my Facebook page. I'm not hard to find.
Just Facebook and search Andy Petersen.
Andy Petersen, absolutely. You'll see my picture there. I'd love to hear from you. And or I'm going to be at these.
You're all over the place, so it's not hard to catch you.
I've got Kirkwood Celebration of Success coming up here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be planting, so I'll be busy doing that too, and hopefully, hopefully at some point Ag will get its voice back too, and where that'll be, we don't know, but.
I know. I know there are some things you're working on, and I'm not able to ask you these questions.
I would like to say this. There, I think, are some, and you know this as well. There are some skills that can't be taken away. Mm-hmm. That I think need to be utilized. So. We'll see.
And I'm going to ask you more about that when you can talk about it.
We'll see what happens.
Andy Petersen,
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for coming on the Iowa podcast.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa podcast.